Good morning. Welcome to ICRP 2021+1. I'll give you a moment to take your seats and then we'll begin. Wow, you're a remarkably compliant group. You must not be used to in-person conferences. Anyway, welcome to Vancouver and to ICRP 2021+1, because you know. This is our 6th International Symposium on the System of Radiological Protection, and we're very happy to be here in Canada, my home country. It's a pleasure. Thank you. So this is the opening session. There will be several welcome remarks, followed by a presentation by Werner Room about what's happening in ICRP, and then we'll have a talk from our Lindell Medal awardee, Haruhino. So we'll start with Peter Elder, who is the Vice President and Chief Science Officer of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, one of the major supporters of the conference. Peter.
Good morning, and thank you. I would like to start by acknowledging that this symposium is being held on the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, who have been stewards of this land since time immemorial. It's a pleasure to welcome everybody to Canada and to the beautiful city of Vancouver. And while it took us an extra year to get here, I'm really excited about the symposium and the learnings that we can do from each other. Just a bit about the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. We are Canada's nuclear regulator. In terms of world regulators, we are actually do everything in terms of safety, security, safeguards, and as well as environmental protection. So we have a very broad mandate. And so from a radiation protection view, we look at obviously radiation protection inside facilities, and we also look at radiation effects in the environment. The one thing we don't do, which one of our co-hosts does, Health Canada, is look at patient safety is not our mandate, but worker safety in hospitals is our mandate. And so we look at this as an important chance to start a dialogue on the next generation of radiation protection, which is the theme of the conference. And this is both in terms of the ICRP review of the system of radiation protection and where that system needs to go in the future, or if changes are necessary, but also in terms of evolving a new generation in the innovation on radiation protection. And we also looked at this conference as an opportunity to showcase a lot of the work on radiation protection that's being done in Canada. And really, we're really interested in hopefully there will be good dialogues and we can move the conversation forward on how radiation protection has to change or adapt to deal with future challenges. So again, welcome to Vancouver, and it's a real pleasure to see so many people here and being able to do this in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for the kind words of welcome. Next up, we have Michael Rinker, who is the Vice President, Regulatory Environment and Sustainability at Bruce Power, one of the major nuclear power companies in Canada. So, up to you.
So good morning. On behalf of Bruce Power, I would like to welcome you to the ICRP's 6th International Symposium on the System of Radiation Protection. I'm joined by many experts from Bruce Power that are here. I've seen some old friends, colleagues, and I hope to meet many more of you throughout the week. It's great to be together in person, learning from and engaging with our champions of the radiation protection industry. At Bruce Power, we recognize the importance of sound radiation protection practices to protect our employees, our vendors, and our communities. We represent the largest nuclear generating station in the world and a workforce of a few thousand. As part of our life extension program, Bruce Power is carrying out a major component replacement project, which will see the replacement of key reactor components to extend the life of our site to 2064, which means more clean, reliable electricity for the people and businesses of Ontario. This is an exciting time for Bruce Power and the nuclear industry in Canada as we undertake one of Canada's largest infrastructure projects and continue to generate a third of the province's electricity, providing steady baseload power and life-saving medical isotopes that are used to treat cancer patients worldwide. As you can imagine, radiation protection is a key element of our work, impacting thousands of employees and our vendor partners on site. So we understand firsthand the importance of the ethical considerations, sound science, and of course, safety practices that go into a successful radiation protection program. We are here because we recognize radiation protection must be fit for purpose. We want to be a part of its development, and we applaud the efforts of the ICRP to take this on. Radiation protection needs to contribute to an appropriate level of protection without unduly limiting the desirable human actions associated with exposure. This is not an easy task, to find the balance of protection on the one hand and enabling important activities on the other. Over the next few days, I look forward to the engaging discussions and how we can shape the next generation of radiation protection practices and policies around the globe. So thank you on behalf of Bruce Power, and enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, again for the very kind words of introduction. Next up, we have a duo of speakers, both representing the Canadian Radiation Protection Association. And for those of you who don't know, the Canadian Radiation Protection Association, CRPA, is the professional association for Canadian RP professionals, obviously. But they're also our partners and hosts in organizing this symposium. So I'm introducing Ali Shusterian and Diana Moscu, who are past and immediate past presidents of the Canadian Radiation Protection Association, to make a few remarks.
Go ahead.
Bienvenue and welcome. We will also like to acknowledge that we are meeting here on an unceded traditional First Nation territory. While Vancouver isn't the name of indigenous origin, the early roots of Vancouver could be tied to the name Kimkunlai, and it means place of many maple trees. On behalf of CRPA, we're excited to welcome you to ICRP 2021+1 in beautiful, cloudy Vancouver, British Columbia. Welcome to all delegates, sponsors, and exhibitors. The entire organizing committee has worked very hard to put together best possible conference.
CRPA officially formed in 1979 and joined the International Radiation Protection Association that same year. Our vision is to be an expert voice of Canadian radiation safety professionals, both nationally and abroad. The objective of the CRPA is to advance the development and communication of scientific knowledge and the practical means for protecting people and the environment from the harmful effects of radiation in a manner consistent with its optimal use for the benefit of society. We achieve this through our affiliations with the regulator, through several joint working groups and relationships with federal and provincial authorities, and by offering a professional designation to our members. Our biggest strength is our members. It is your participation that makes the CRPA so special. The theme for this symposium is Radiological Protection, the Next Generation. And while I refrain from making a Star Trek joke, we do look forward to all of the presentations, posters, and exhibitions. And while the last few years have been difficult, we are happy to finally have this opportunity to be here with you all.
So I'll ask everyone to keep calm and relax and enjoy what Vancouver has to offer, and make the most conference and use of this opportunity to meet and catch up with your colleagues, not virtual, in person. Profitez de Vancouver du congrès et de cette occasion pour rencontrer vos collègues et prendre de leurs nouvelles en personne. Merci, thank you.
Before we move on to the next talk, I'd like to thank again the welcome address speakers and also Health Canada, who is another partner. They're our national health department in supporting the symposium as well for going forward. So thank you very much to Bruce Power, to CNSC, to Health Canada, and to CRPA. So next in the program is Werner Room. He's chair of the International Commission on Radiological Protection. He will give a welcome and introduction and also talk a bit about what we're doing. So Werner, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Vancouver. Be it cloudy or not, I think we have a nice environment here. Well, I'm going to give the welcome address and the introduction for this symposium. How does it work?
The green arrow should go forward.
Oh, no, okay. So this is not the first ICRP symposium, as you probably all know. It's part of a series of symposia already. So the first took place in Washington in the US in 2011, followed by Abu Dhabi in 2013, then Seoul in South Korea, then Paris in Europe, and then Adelaide in Australia, and now we are here in Canada, so welcome again to Vancouver in Canada. There are a lot of first times these days. For example, it's the first time that we meet in person again as the community of radiation protection since the last symposium in Adelaide, 2019, so 3 years passed since then. It's the first time that we meet in person in the new term. The new term started last year in 2021, and it's really the first chance that we all meet here together. It's the first time that we have so many task groups meeting together at one place. We have never organized this before. It's the first symposium in Canada, obviously. And it's also the first time for me, as the chair of ICRP, to join and participate in a symposium of ICRP. So this means that it was quite an effort to organize all the meetings, side meetings, in addition to the symposium. We had already a meeting of the main commission here. We have 2 days of continuing education. We had the ICRP plenary session yesterday, and now we have the symposium. And this will be followed and has already seen the committee meetings of ICRP. The 4 standing committees met already, and they will continue to meet after the symposium. And as I mentioned, we have numerous task group meetings as side events to this symposium. And all the meetings, or most of the meetings, will be held hybrid. This is because of the new times now. Not everyone could come in person, but at least we wanted to offer the opportunity that everyone could join us, at least digitally. And this was quite an effort for the Secretariat of ICRP. And I have here listed all the members by name because they worked so hard to make this all possible. So thanks again for the Secretariat. The membership of ICRP, as it looked in end of September this year, almost 350 members. This is an all-time high. We have never seen so many ICRP members before, and this has to do that we have a lot of more new task groups. I will come to this later. And this has to do with that we have a lot of young scientists, mentees, who joined ICRP recently. What you can also see from the map is that as ICRP wishes to serve for radiological protection for the whole world, we try to cover all areas, all regions of the world, and I think it's already okay. We could do a bit better, I think, but at least we are on a good way to cover all the areas, all the regions. This is the list of task groups, maybe too small, even too small that you can read them all. They are on the website. We have now 30 active task groups. 30 active task groups. Again, I think this is an all-time high. This has to do with our efforts now to review the system of radiological protection. So we have already started this endeavor. And you see that since the last symposium in 2019 in Australia, we had more than 10 new task groups. And it's really the first time now, today, here, this week, that they can meet in person. We have some new developments in the Secretariat, which you might not be aware of yet. So since a few weeks, we have now again 2 assistant scientific secretaries, one from Japan, one from South Korea, and they are living in Canada, they're working in Canada to support the Secretariat. We have also, since this year, a number of technical secretaries and writers. This is a new concept. These guys here, listed here, they agreed to work for ICRP and spend part of their workforce to ICRP, let's say 1 day per week or 2 days per week, and they got the permission of their employer. So this is another way how ICRP is supported, and this helps a lot in, for example, in organizing and running the numerous task groups we already have, because they help task group work. And I should also make you aware of the fact that we have an announcement of a new position, a job opening for a deputy scientific secretary, which would be a full-time permanent position based in Ottawa, in Canada. And this call is open until the end of January next year. So if you are interested, please apply. And this is needed, really, this is needed to enhance the Secretariat, because there is a huge work, a huge project in front of us. I will come to this soon. Now the system review is launched, and this implies work, let's say, for the next decade, for the decade to come. If you like, we launched this in 2019, and it's a big joint project of the ICRP. And you see here highlighted big, because it will be a huge effort. And joint is also highlighted here in italics, and this has a double meaning. First of all, it's a joint project of all members of ICRP. And this, I think it's obvious. The project is to review and revise the last general recommendations, which is publication 103, which was published in 2007. But joint means also that we would like to do that, we as ICRP, to do that with the global community in radiological protection, that this is a joint effort, an international effort, where we should all, or we hope that all contribute. And of course, for this, we have to identify the major questions which are perhaps open. We call them building blocks, essential work required for the next general recommendations. And we have already published some ideas, a number of ideas on that. This paper, for example, we called it Keeping the ICRP Recommendations Fit for Purpose. It was published last year. This includes reflections of the previous main commission on the system, on what could be refined, what could be reviewed. There is a twin paper also published last year on areas of research to support the system of radiological protection. And we have a third paper, which also is important in this context. You might remember that last year, almost exactly a year ago, we had a digital workshop where we looked for feedback and asked the community worldwide what we should do to review the system. And the summary of the workshop with the major take-home messages is summarized or is given in this third paper. All the papers are open access papers, so if you haven't read them yet, you can download them and just start reading and then develop your own ideas. All these were meant to stimulate the discussion on and support ICRP in the project to review the system. I would like to mention two very recent projects of the ICRP. One is a call for action to strengthen the expertise in radiological protection worldwide. Now, we noticed, and not only we as the ICRP noticed, that there is a lack of support for research, education, and training in radiological protection. And this is not just our personal, private view. If you look at in the literature and review the literature, you will find that many organizations all over the world have published papers on this topic, and this includes the IAO, WHO, started already with the Bonn call for action. We have NCRP in the US. We have a number of papers dealing with the situation in Europe or internationally. The German SSK issued a paper last year, and the National Academy of Sciences in the US. So there is a global concern among the international community that we have a decline in resources to support radiation research and radiological protection. And because of this, we thought that we should call for action as the ICRP dealing with radiological protection. And we have developed a paper which is not yet out. It's not yet finished. We had last discussions on Saturday in the main commission on that paper. We have got already feedback from major international organizations a month ago at the European Radiation Protection Week in Europe. And our plan is to publish this soon. But let me give you some reflections on this project. Well, we think that radiological protection is indeed relevant also if you look in terms of, or discuss them in terms of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And for example, we think that the trend of decreasing expertise in radiological protection will have a direct but negative impact on SDG 3, good health and well-being. SDG 4, quality education, is obvious that this is central, that education and training in radiological protection would contribute to this goal. If we think about existing inequalities in radiation protection capacities in various parts of the world, then this reflects or is relevant for SDG 10, reduced inequalities, or radiological protection as it addresses protection not only of humans but also of the environment from detrimental effects of exposure to radiation. This relates to SDG 14, life below water, and 15, life on land. I think this is important this is clear to us that we really can contribute to these overall goals of the United Nations. The paper includes some reflections of the ICRP on opportunities from modern societies. For example, safe radiation technologies will allow for innovative medical diagnostic and treatment modalities. It's obvious, for us it's clear, but we should make this clear to the rest of the world as well. for the development of new materials, new radiation detection technologies, advanced long-term space exploration missions, long-term safety of disposal and radioactive waste, not to mention energy production. We already heard something in our welcome address. Improvement of public health by consideration of natural sources of ionizing radiation. It's a public health issue, ionizing radiation. Think about radon in dwellings and workplaces, mining and extraction of oil and gas, natural radioactive material in the food chain norm, cosmic radiation, or a sufficiently high level of competence will serve as a trustworthy source of information for stakeholders and the public, will empower people to make their own informed choices, but at the same time avoid anxiety about the detrimental effects of radiation, so focus more on the beneficial effects of radiation. Well, of course, one can write this down, and this sounds great, but of course we should also think about whether we can do something. And indeed, ICRP can do something, and we have already initiated a number of actions, and I just want to give you some examples. For example, in 2020, ICRP publications have been made freely available after 2 years of an embargo period, so that everyone can read the recommendations of the ICRP worldwide. We prepare easy-to-read information through ICRpedia on the website of ICRP. We have established a mentorship program, and as of now, we have about more than 30 mentees working in ICRP task groups. We are organizing digital workshops and seminars. And just remember the digital workshop last year, which I already mentioned, where we had, I think, around 1,500 registrations. But although we want to save the world, it's clear that we cannot do that alone. ICRP is a charity, so we have limited resources, financial resources, and so we thought we really should make clear that the whole world, the whole community worldwide should work on this. And that's why we call for action. For example, we think about governments and funding organizations that they should strengthen the resources allocated by them to support radiological protection research. We think about national research laboratories who have their own funds already, but that they should launch and sustain long-term research programs, for example, on topics relevant for radiological protection in the broadest sense, of course. Universities, that they should offer students opportunities to participate in undergraduate and graduate programs. Communication to the public is a very, very important issue, that this should be improved on the basis about the underlying science and principles of the current system, and also education and training should be supported. So this is our call for action. Probably we will call it Vancouver Call for Action. And we hope that this will go out soon. This will be published in the open literature, that's the plan, in due course, as soon as we have finished this work. Finally, I would like briefly mention the conflict in Ukraine and the reaction of the ICRP. This is something I think this makes us all concerned, and radiation in a way plays also a role, and so we as the ICRP thought we should deal with this. And as a very immediate action, earlier this year, we have made ICRP publication 146 free to access. This deals with radiological protection of people and the environment in the event of a large nuclear accident. And we decided for this, seeing that we have a war in a country where nuclear power plants are operating. This was something which we never wanted to see, but it's just reality. And so this was the first quick action of ICRP. So it's now free for access. And now, maybe you saw that already on our website, We give advice for the public on protection in case of a nuclear detonation. Again, a topic we never wished to think about, but we learned that we have to think about this issue as well. And this was now mainly done by work of Task Group 120. They summarized what is already known. This is nothing new, but it summarizes what is already known, and it's written in plain language that hopefully everyone can understand. Initially, the terms of reference of this task group did not include such kind of work, but we had decided at the recent main commission meeting, I think a month ago in Rome, in Italy, that the scope should be extended to include detonations of small nuclear devices, and on the longer term, we may also include larger nuclear detonations. This is the membership of Task Group 120, and I would like to present this explicitly here because they did a tremendous work. It was really a lot of work to put together all this in a comparably short time, and I would also thank Chris who joined this effort. And it took several night shifts, I think, that we could announce this material at the European Radiation Protection Week a couple of weeks ago in Europe. So this includes, the material includes some advice during the first 10 minutes, the first 24 hours after detonation, gives some understanding of hazards, how to be prepared for a nuclear detonation, and how to respond to alerts. And this is, as I said, in plain language, so this means there are cartoons there, there's a YouTube video, and as I mentioned, it was already announced a couple of weeks ago. In the meantime, it's translated in 12 languages, and this again demonstrates that the community of radiological protection all over the world is concerned, and actually the first already worked when it was announced in Europe, in Portugal, at the European Radiation Protection Week, and 2 or 3 days later, the first translations already came in. So you can find more on the website of ICRP, and we plan to update the advice now for time periods longer than 24 hours. Well, very briefly, this is the program. I will not go into details of the symposium here, just want to mention. We are now in the first session, and then the sessions on Tuesday until Thursday, they include 4 sub-sessions, and at the beginning, keynote lectures. So please be aware, it's always the same structure. Please also be aware of the keynotes given at 8:45 every day in the morning. And with this, I would like to finish my introduction. On behalf of the hosting organizations here, CRPA, CNSC, and Health Canada, we all wish you, we as the ICRP wish you enjoy the symposium, enjoy the meetings, and also enjoy Vancouver. And the last slide is, I would like to explicitly acknowledge all the ICRP members for their dedication to ICRP, especially during the last 3 years during the pandemic, which didn't make it easier, as you can imagine. And despite the challenges due to the pandemic, ICRP has been able to keep pushing forward thanks to the dedication of all our volunteers. This is voluntary work, basically, and this stuff. And finally, I would like to thank our sponsors who made this event, who made it happen. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good and fruitful discussions and symposium. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Werner, for an excellent presentation. We're doing quite well for time, so if there are a couple of questions from the audience, please just approach one of the 3 microphones and speak. Anyone?
So please don't be shy.
Yeah. Someone has to go first. No. Thank you.
I mean, there will be plenty of occasions to discuss, to ask questions. We are all here. If you're from the ICRP, any burning question, any comments, and I always say any complaints, we will take everything on board. Yes, please.
Come on up to the microphone, yeah.
Good morning. My name is Raj Garg from the CNSC. Excellent presentation by you, Mr. Warner. You mentioned about this Ukraine is kind of going on within Ukraine, and these nice documents that you prepared for, I believe, for the public, the alert that they have to be known for. How do the outreach, how would the public know that you have those documents published that they can refer to in case of a nuclear accident? Thank you.
Good question. I mean, it doesn't help if nobody knows that ICRP is existing and that there is a website where you can find such kind of information. I mean, this kind of information can be found at different places as well. It just assembles and brings it together here. But I mean, please distribute and please tell your organizations and say that the ICRP is concerned and that we have some information available. Well, what else can we do than just publishing it on our website?
I can add a little bit in that we have a relatively strong social media program thanks to Kelsey Kluche and Charlotte White, who's maybe in the audience as well. And we've put out many notices through our social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, other things I don't know about probably, on this topic. In addition, many national and international organizations have linked to it from their websites because with the announcement at the European RP Week, there was a high profile right from the beginning. So you can find it on many other organizations' websites as well. If you're a national regulatory authority, feel free to link to our page. Thank you. So other questions? We have time for one or two more, if there are any. Yeah, Sandra, go ahead.
Good morning, Chandra Demeter from University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. One of the things I was hoping to hear through the course of the conference, so maybe this is just a prelude, is when you do revisions to the system of radiologic protection, I'm really curious at what point you start the revisions. Do you dump all your other assumptions and reprove them? So the issues of effective dose relative to the individual, the issues of low dose radiation and what models you use, or do you start with those as a starting point? I'm just curious where on that spectrum of de novo revisions do you start? Thank you.
Well, the idea is, at the beginning, we wanted to identify those, what we call building blocks, the important questions which we have to look at and address. And this is, I would say, almost done. So we discussed this with all the major international organizations already. We had a workshop, for example, in Europe a month ago, where we discussed this, and we think that at the current stage, we haven't overlooked major topics. So the topics are identified now, and the next step is that we will establish task groups who will work on those specific building blocks. These are still sub-projects. And then later, I don't want to give you a time frame now, but in a couple of years, we will put everything on the table, collect everything, and then this will form the major project, the major building. We have blocks, and then we try to assemble the building. This was what you asked for. And then, of course, this will be discussed in parallel with all the major international organizations. It will be put on the website for public consultation. We will have workshops. Any of the task groups working on the building blocks, by the way, are supposed to do that openly, transparently, organize webinars, task groups. So, and in this way, we would like to, shall I say a number, 5 years or so, start thinking about how this fits together. At the moment, still everything is on the table, but of course we have in mind that we will not change anything just because it's nice to change. So there must be good reasons, if we propose any change, that RP gets better after that. And we have a system which works at the moment. The system works, it's robust, and is applied worldwide. So this is then a balance between trying a bit innovative on the one hand, but being conservative on the other hand, to make sure that everyone can apply the system and also communicate the systems. Maybe also one element will be to simplify the system, hopefully. So this is at least our desire and our ambition, and we hope that you all join this.
So we have time for one more. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Sabol. I'm from the Czech Republic. I just wonder whether ICRP is going to do something with the present system, a very complicated radiation protection quantities, not so much unit, but quantities which even experts are not sure how to interpret some of those quantities which are widely used. And what about using this quantity for the communication with the public? It is very difficult. I personally see that we have too many quantities. There is no other area where there are so many quantities to express risk from radiation exposure. And I suggested some time ago a system that the system should change into two parts. One for experts, for universities, research institute, and another for practical use. Where the number, now we have more than 10 radiation protection quantities. And I can see even from the discussion in scientific papers that even experts have no opinion, the same opinion on how to interpret. Recently, I read, I will not name the name of a scientific journal, but there was a discussion, what is the difference between equivalent dose and ambient dose equivalent? So if this is not clear to experts, what you can expect from other people who are responsible to follow radiation protection regulations, procedures, and so on? And even producers of instruments are somehow using response of the instrument up to 10 sievert, which is, of course, inconsistent because you cannot use sievert for high radiation exposure. So sorry to keep you longer. Thank you.
I mean, this point is well taken. I think we all agree that the system is a bit complicated, and I'm not so sure whether I understand every detail. But maybe one example towards this direction, we have, I forgot, was it publication 147, where we think about quantities, and there it's proposed to abandon equivalent dose as a dose-limiting quantity. Maybe it's no more needed. That's at least proposed in this publication. And this goes a little bit towards the direction you mentioned. But we are aware of the problem, that it's complicated, that's difficult to understand, that it's difficult to communicate. And this is part of the game now, that we make it better. I'm fully with you.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. Now we're going to move on to the Lindell medal portion of the session. So, Haru, you're welcome to come to the stage.
I have a slide, a couple of slides, yes, to explain to you first about the Lindell medal for the promotion of radiological protection. This is how it looks like. It looks nice. I also want to have one, but maybe I will not fulfill all the criteria, unfortunately. So the medal is dedicated to Lindell, who lived from 1922 to 2016. And just to remind you that Lindell was one of the big figures in radiological protection and in the ICRP. He served as the scientific secretary from 1957 to 62. He was a main commission member from 1963 to 85. And he was the chair of ICRP from 1977 to 1985. So really a big figure in our organization. He played a central role, in particular, in development ICRP publication 26, which was one of the fundamental publications over the last 50 years, and which set the foundation of our system, even as it stands now. It was introduced by ICRP not so long time ago, 2017, for early to mid-career individuals. So that's why I'm probably no more eligible to this. And for those who may have made significant contributions to promotion of radiological protection, it is awarded every 2 years at the symposium of ICRP. So this is the place now where we should do that. And the first medal was awarded in 2018 at the 90th anniversary of ICRP in Stockholm, the home of Lindell. And by the way, the place where ICRP was founded in 1928. The first awardee was Nicole Martinez. She's somewhere here. I saw her already yesterday. And you see here already that, of course, it's nice and pleasant to get this medal, but it also means some work. So we expect those who get the medal to give a presentation during the symposium and also to write a paper. So Nicole did that. The second medal awardee was Liz Ainsbury. She's also here somewhere, and she also had to give a lecture and to write a paper about her work. So we expect also now for the next winner of the medal to do the same. And the next winner, as you already know, is Dr. Haruyuki Ogino from Japan. And let me just remind you of a few things. Probably many of you know him already. So when he started his career, he worked at the Central Research Institute of Electric Power Industry in Japan, ICRP, and conducted research on low-dose and low-dose rate radiation risk. He then became the chief for international affairs and radiation protection at the Nuclear Regulation Authority, NRA in Tokyo. And this was probably the most important thing, he joined ICRP from 2016 to 18 and supported ICRP in Ottawa in Canada as the assistant scientific secretary and also as the associate editor of ICRP publications. When he returned back to Japan, he continued to work for ICRP. For example, he's a member of ICRP Task Group 114. He supports, and he continues to support radiological protection. For example, he supports the Radiation Safety Standards Committee, the RASC committee of the agency, the IAEA, the Committee on Radiological Protection and Public Health, CRPPH of the OECD, of NIA, the Secretariat of the Japan Radiation Council, and he acts as special liaison from NRA to the US National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurements, NCRP. So clearly he continues to be involved in radiological protection, and it is a real pleasure for me to pass to you the medal and to give you this award. I think the main commission has found a good choice, and I would like to thank you, Haru, for your continuous work for radiological protection, and I think we should give him a bigger applause at the beginning already. So now it's my pleasure to pass to him to hand over the medal and the certificate.
Maybe to get a good picture, where should we stand? Okay.
First time, wow, it's heavy. Can I open it?
Don't tip it too far, but yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, can we just... That's great. That's great. Yeah. So, Haru, congratulations. Thank you. Be careful. Yes, I will be. And you get the cert. Or will you pass the cert? You can pass the cert.
You can set that in.
So congratulations again, Haru. And 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 now we are looking forward to your presentation. The floor is yours.
So, thank you very much, Banner, for your kind introduction, and good morning, everyone. I am Haruyuki Ogino from Nuclear Regulation Authority of Japan. First of all, I'd like to thank my colleagues, friends, and family, as I would not be where I am today without their support. And I'm grateful to ICRP for this great honor, and I look forward to continuing the promotion of radiological protection around the world. Good. So it was November 5th, 2020, so almost 2 years ago, that I received the news that I would be the recipient of the Lindell Medal. I was not even informed that I was on the list, so I was really surprised when Dr. Claire Cousins reached out to me with the good news. After the announcement was made via the ICRP news, I received congratulatory messages from friends and colleagues all over the world, and it was one of my most joyous days of my career. As you can see, the Lindell Medal has been awarded to 2 scientists in the past, namely Dr. Martinez of the United States and Dr. Ainsbury of the United Kingdom, and it is my honor to be the 3rd recipient alongside them. And Nicole and Elizabeth are already established at the forefront of their fields, and although I am still a bit inexperienced compared to them, I hope to use this award as an encouragement to commit myself even more fully to my work. So soon after the announcement of this award, the Radiation Protection Societies of Japan, Korea, and Australia jointly prepared a roundtable discussions with young scientists. The results are summarized in a paper in the Journal of Radiation Protection and Research, which is a joint journal of the 3 societies. After a long period of difficulty in conducting face-to-face meetings due to COVID-19, I would say that one of the few benefits that COVID-19 brought was the ability to quickly plan and execute online events and discussion. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved in the radiation protection societies. So today, for my Lindell speech, I'd like to talk about 3 things. The first is about my recent activities for the promotion of radiation protection. Second, I'd like to introduce the results of the research I have conducted over the past 20 years or so, and how these results have been reflected in international recommendations. And finally, I'd like to share my thoughts on what relevant organizations in the world of RP must continue to do for the benefit of present and future generations. So here are some highlights of my recent activities. Like all of you, all travel was suspended for more than 2 years due to COVID-19, but some of them resumed in the spring of 2022 this year. The first is a review mission on occupational radiation protection. The second is on the Convention on Radioactive Waste Management. And the third is a regulatory review on the discharge of treated water from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant into the ocean. These 3 activities are outlined in the following slides. As many of you may know, OPAS missions are conducted as an independent appraisal service in the field of radiation protection of workers. It provides an opportunity for member states to have its occupational radiation protection program independently assessed and evaluated against international safety standards. The most recent OPAS mission was held last month in the Philippines, and I had the opportunity to participate in this mission as deputy team leader. In the limited time of just over 10 days, we visited regulatory, medical, industrial, and technical service provider sites to investigate how the IAEA safety standards, which are developed on a consensus basis using ICRP recommendations, are being used at each site. This was an opportunity for those of us who develop ICRP recommendations or IAEA safety standards to be reminded of how important it is to understand how they are being implemented in the field of radiation protection. For those who will be developing ICRP recommendations or IAEA safety standards, I believe it is extremely important to always be aware of how they are actually being used in the field, what problems they are facing, and how new recommendations and safety standards will lead to an improved level of safety, and to keep these things in mind when conducting discussions and then reaching consensus. From June to July of this year, a review meeting of the contracting parties of the Joint Convention on the Safety of Spent Fuel and Radioactive Waste Management was held in Vienna, and I was able to participate in my capacity as a coordinator for a country group. This was my first experience attending a convention meeting, and I learned a lot. Although many issues were discussed over the 2 weeks, it seemed to me that common issues were how to involve stakeholders in the decision-making process, and how to secure the human resources and maintain their capacity, rather than the existing of technical issues that are difficult to solve. One of the things I strongly felt is that in a mature society, it is important to make decisions transparently at a certain stage, while listening to as many stakeholders as possible, and that it is extremely meaningful to share the experiences of countries with advanced efforts in this regard with the world at large. In this sense, it is important that legally binding convention meetings are held on a regular basis to provide opportunities to come together for discussion. I would like to continue to contribute to the promotion of radiation protection and a safe use of atomic energy as much as possible through my involvement in such activities. In April 2021, Japan announced the basic policy on handling of the treated water stored at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station, which is to discharge the treated water into the sea surrounding the plant, subject to domestic regulatory approvals. Soon after, the Japanese authorities requested assistance from the IAEA to monitor and review these plans and activities to make it sure that they will be implemented in a safe and transparent way. The first review mission to the NRA of Japan took place in March of this year, and the report summarizing these findings was released in June. Since last year, I have reviewed the environmental impact assessment report submitted by Tokyo Electric Power Company to the NRA as a member of the Nuclear Regulation Division of the NRA. I also participated in this IAEA review mission to explain the status of the review to international experts from the United States, Argentina, Vietnam, Korea, France, China, Russian Federation, and Australia. While there are many opinions surrounding the ocean discharge of treated water, it goes without saying that transparency is vital. The review meeting being conducted by the IAEA involves international experts, and to assure quality, radiation measurements are taken by laboratories around the world. The review reports prepared by the NRA are also published in English, and furthermore, all review meetings conducted by the NRA are recorded and distributed so that anyone can have a clear picture of how the decisions were made. Of course, there are other aspects to my career thus far, but for my presentation today, I wanted to keep the focus on these three key points. So for my next topic, I will show how the results of 20 years of research have been reflected in the international recommendations. So my first research engagement was almost 20 years ago, was about the development of a compact medical accelerator using laser compton scattering, which was being advanced by Professor Uesaka of the University of Tokyo. This was a national project to develop a device that generates monochromatic high-energy X-rays by accelerating electron beams with a high-frequency accelerator called an X-band and colliding them with a YAG laser. To enhance the number of photons generated, we constructed a system that orbits the laser and conducted demonstration experiments using a low-energy laser. At that time, I was very busy conducting experiments in Tokai village on weekdays and then returning to Tokyo on weekends. However, as a member of a cutting-edge national project, I was able to work with kind instructors and colleagues, and I was able to learn a lot. The various techniques I learned laid the foundation for my life in research and science. In April 26, I joined the Central Research Institute of Electric Power Industry, ICRP, and one of the first studies I was involved in was an experimental study on obtaining basic parameters of radioactive surface contamination, such as source efficiencies and removal factors. Experiments were performed using unsealed isotopes in a laboratory in Tokyo. The results of the experiment were immediately compiled into papers and have been used in radiation control, mainly by Japanese electric power companies. The topic of my subsequent research continued to be surface contamination. At that time, Japan introduced a clearance system for nuclear reactor facilities, and the standard that was introduced was the radioactivity concentrations as given in the IAEA Safety Guide RSG 1.7, published in 2004. However, since the clearance levels were not given in units of surface density, the research team in ICRP developed a dose assessment model for surface contamination and proposed the levels in units of surface density for representative nuclides. Sensitivity analysis was also performed by using probabilistic approach. And it was only last month that the results of the papers, which were published in 2009, were internationally reflected in the IAEA safety standards on exemption and clearance. As you can see here in this slide, currently the work is underway to revise the safety guides RSG 1.7, and the surface contamination dose assessment model was introduced as one of the examples in the revised guide approved for publication by the Commission on Safety Standards in its meeting held a few weeks ago in Vienna. So I look forward to the day when the dose assessment model for surface contamination that we developed more than a decade ago will be used by many users. Five years after I joined the ICRP, the Fukushima accident occurred, and it had a profound impact on those who involved in radiation protection. After thinking through what I could contribute as a researcher, I turned my attention to the screening levels that were being applied at that time to surface contamination of body surfaces and objects. I thought we could make use of the dose assessment method we had developed before the accident. Assuming the most commonly used measurement instrument in Fukushima at that time, we found that even if surface contamination equivalent to the screening levels existed on an item, the radiation dose would be below the intervention exemption level, and the findings were published in Radiation Protection Dosimetry within 10 months of the accident. And subsequently, we proposed the operational levels for the unconditional release of non-food commodities from the areas affected by the accident, and published this result also in Radiation Protection Dosimetry in 2013. There were well-defined standards for food and drinking water worldwide, but they were not always clearly defined standards for non-food commodities. This issue on safety of non-food commodities is also being discussed at the IAEA's Radiation Safety Standards Committee, and I will be chairing the topical session at the 53rd RASC meeting later this month. Furthermore, our interest extended to food safety regulations. In 2012, together with Dr. Nobuyuki Hamada, we compiled a radiological basis for the food safety regulations applied after the Fukushima accident, as well as the measurement data from 1 year after the accident, and published 2 papers. As with the papers on surface contamination, there was a significant response. Novi is still involved as an external expert in the International Radiation Protection Survey project that I am in charge of at the NRA Japan, and I hope to continue to cooperate with Novi and other Japanese researchers in promoting radiation protection in the future. One example is a report published in 2014 by the National Research Council in the United States. This report summarized lessons learned from the Fukushima accident to improve the safety of nuclear power plants in the United States, and our papers on surface contamination and food safety regulations were used as references to support their discussions. So I would like to take a break from the topic of surface contamination and food safety and introduce a bit of how information on radiation exposure and health effects was disseminated after the Fukushima accident in Japan. The 2 figures on this slide, both created and published by QST NIRS, were widely used after the Fukushima accident. The figure on the left shows the levels of artificial radiation and natural background radiation, and this figure is still used in many situations today. The figures on the right explains how much low-dose radiation exposure increases the percentage of people who die from cancer. It says that about 30% of Japanese die from cancer as a result of their daily lifestyle, and for example, exposure to 100 mSv adds 0.5% to this figure. I am aware that there are many opinions about the use of nominal risk coefficients developed for the purpose of RP, extrapolated to such low doses, but it's a fact that such a figure has been used in many communications after the Fukushima accident. At that time, I focused on the explanation about 30% of lifetime risk of cancer mortality. I thought that if the average value was approximately 30%, how much regional differences could be among the 47 prefectures in Japan, and by clarifying this, I expected that it would be possible for each person to grasp the relative size of the increased risk due to exposure. We wanted each person to be aware of the magnitude of risk that exists even in the absence of exposure, and to consider the importance of taking measures commensurate with the magnitude of the increased radiation risk, rather than conveying the message that radiation risk is small and therefore not a big deal. So using the most recent statistical data available at that time, we calculated the lifetime risk of cancer mortality by 47 prefectures and published it in the Japanese Journal of Health Physics in 2014. The study found that the background lifetime risk of cancer mortality ranges from 24 to 28% among 47 prefectures. In 2020, ICRP released its publications on radiation protection after a large-scale nuclear accident, and our paper was cited as one of the references to support the sentence, saying that exposure to 100 mSv increases lifetime cancer mortality risk by 0.5%. So once again, We do not condone such regional differences because measures against cancer should be promoted so that people can live healthy lives. However, it is very meaningful to have basic information on the baseline risk level as a benchmark and how much is added to it by radiation exposure. In other words, we must always view risk in the context of the whole. So my next interest was in the approach of probability of radiation-related cancers. In ICRP publication 99, the relationship between the dose and the population size is presented in terms of the statistical power, stating that a population size of 600,000 is needed to detect effects of the doses of the order of 10 milligray, which increases to 60 million on the order of 1 milligray. However, this was based on assumptions that the baseline risk was a constant value of 10% in the population, and I wondered if, in practice, the increase in cancer might be even more difficult to detect because of the variations of the baseline risk within the population. Then in this paper, we estimated the age and gender differences in cancer risks in the Japanese population using ICRP methodology and discussed approaches to quantitatively account for probability. The paper on the probability of radiation-related cancer was cited in the IAEA's latest safety report, which is now in preprint. In light of the UNSCARE's 2012 report on attribution of radiation health effects and inference on radiation risks, the IAEA has compiled a discussion on the application on the safety standards by this safety report. Among them, our paper is cited as a reference to lead the reader for further discussions on probability of radiation-related cancers. Also in the ICRP publication 147 on the use of those quantities that just we discussed previously, our paper on the results on the organ-specific cancer risk calculations for the Japanese population is cited to support the recommendations by ICRP. I want to further introduce two more research results that I conducted before I left ICRP and accepted my new position in NRA in 2019. One of the last studies was about the optimization in radioactive waste disposal. The optimization of radiation protection is not just the minimization of radiation exposure, but now is viewed more broadly to reflect the increasing role of individual equity, the safety culture, and the stakeholder involvement in our modern societies. In this paper, we reviewed the relevant international discussions on the optimization of radiation protection and extracted the four key elements. One, broadening of the optimization process towards judgmental decision-making. Two, the dose level that would be achieved as a consequence of the optimization process. Three, the use of predicted doses beyond the time frame of a few generations. And four, the need for a dialogue between authorities and the operating management. We examined the role of those constraints from an ethical point of view and discussed the importance of reducing the inequity in the dose distribution of individual exposures when selecting a protective option for the design of radioactive waste disposal facility. As you know, ICRP has established Task Group 97 to study recommendations on radiation protection in near-surface disposal and has just conducted a consultation with special liaison organizations. The draft report by TG97 cited our paper, this one, to support its recommendations regarding the importance of ethical considerations when considering options for disposal of radioactive waste. I was also involved in the study on the quantification of the conservatism of committed dose concept for the internal exposure. When judging the compliance with the dose limits, it is recommended by ICRP to assume that all doses are given in the year in which internal exposure occurs, when in fact the radiation emitted by the nuclide will continue beyond the second year inside the human body. And in terms of the radiosensitivities, the cancer risk generally decreases with each additional year, so the study was to determine how conservative this committed dose concept is by calculating the cancer risk in detail. Dr. Michiya Sasaki of ICRP summarized the results and published them in the Journal of Radiological Protection in 2021. So this is the last slide regarding my research results and how they have been reflected in the international recommendations. So now I would like to move on to the last part of my presentation. As you are all aware, ICRP is a unique organization. It is a registered charity in the United Kingdom and is also recognized as the de facto world authority in the field of radiological protection. ICRP is where it is today because of almost 100 years of wisdom and experience provided by committed volunteer experts from around the world. Their recommendations have been used as a basis for regulations and policies in almost every country, and with the current review and revision of the system of RP, I have no doubt that they will continue to make significant contributions in radiation safety for patients, workers, the public, and the environment. Looking back over the past 20 years or so that I have been involved in the field of radiation protection, not much has changed in terms of information on the purely scientific aspects of radiological protection. However, ethical values, one of the key pillars of underlying the system of RP, have become more important and defined. In addition, a great deal of experience has been accumulated, including a dramatic increase in the amount of information available to patients, workers, and the public due to the sophistication of networks. Not to mention the fact that the world has experienced a pandemic that has greatly advanced means of communication. Furthermore, the experience of a large-scale nuclear accident taught us lessons such as the implications of implementing basic principles like justification and optimization in the actual society that supports the lives of many people. The importance of co-expertise process to restore management capacity in the recovery phase, and loss of trust in experts and government. The accumulation of experience in these and other circumstances will become even more significant in society over the next few decades in terms of stakeholder involvement in decision-making processes. In a society undergoing significant change, it is necessary to give careful thought to which groups will be perceived as authoritative organizations by the constituents of the future. In an age when smartphones have become so ubiquitous and the public can easily connect with experts in their field and have access to a vast amount of information, I believe that creating international recommendations in a transparent manner is a necessary component for any organization to continue to be recognized as an authoritative body. I believe that the ideal form of an authoritative organization in the new society of the future is to continue to show how it came to make such recommendations, how it reflected the opinions of interested parties in the process, and how it discloses its records with as much transparency as possible. I am aware that some have pointed out that by involving many people than necessary, we are losing our authority. However, I feel that we have already entered a society where we are simply deciding things behind the closed doors and announcing that we want the rest to follow suit is not considered an authoritative organization. At minimum, the world needs information that can be accessed at any time through digital content. We need to engage in interactive discussions with stakeholders at events just like this one, and take steady steps with well-documented discussion processes to not only reduce radiation risk, but also improve overall safety. The question now is what we must do to ensure that decision-making advances in a way that not only makes sense to the present generations, but will be easily consumed by future generations. I believe that the time will come when organizations that continue to adopt such an attitude will be recognized as authoritative organizations in the new society of the future. I feel that the path ICRP is taking to formulate the next set of general recommendations by new big joint project is doing just that. I will continue to play a role in the ICRP process, and I encourage those of you here today to do the same. I'd like to conclude my presentation today with the hope that ICRP and all international organizations will continue to be recognized as the global beacons of radiological protection. Moving forward, I will take immense pride in continuing to serve as a member of this community. Thank you for your attention, and I wish the 6th Symposium every success.
So we have just a little bit of time. We can take one burning question if there is one. Otherwise, catch Haru at coffee break. Or maybe everyone just wants to have a coffee and you can chat informally. Yeah, so thanks again, Haru.
Thank you very much.